Thank you for tuning in to Docs and Boxed. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to our channel so that more people can get the content that you love. Enjoy! Welcome to episode 3 of Docs and Boxed. And Dr. Isono, can you introduce yourself with your name, job, and education?
Sure. Steve Isono. What do you say? I've never done a podcast, so say I'm an orthopedic surgeon. And then what do you want me to start with my education? Like high
Um,
school? I can start with high school if you want, since you're in high
yeah,
school.
sure.
So
Yeah.
I grew up here in Oakland. So I went to Oakland High and, graduated in old school with you, right? I graduated high school in Oakland High in 74. And then I went to kind of crazy. I'd never been out of California, but then I ended up going to Harvard from
Mhm.
74 to 78, majored in biochemistry. Then I went from 78 to 82 at Northwestern in Chicago for med school. Then from that was 78 to 82, then 82 to 87. I got back to the West Coast and did my orthopedic surgery internship and residency at Stanford. Had an opportunity to study abroad and did surgery in Japan, in Tokyo and Kyoto, and then fortunately been able to be back here, back in the Bay Area, back home, um, and then since then actually all the way through today. So still practicing today, and still having a lot of fun and having a crazy practice. So
That's impressive. Yeah. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about is I noticed on your bio that you did a lot of sports in high school. So, how did your involvement in sports factor into your decision to specialize in sports medicine?
I think it did. For sure, I would tell you that. I mean, going back then, so I did. I probably liked basketball the best, even though we were terrible. We kind of sucked actually. So playing the OAL, we were just non-competitive, but there were some really tough teams back then in the Bay Area. But so I played baseball, basketball. I ran track. I actually was a jumper. I was a long jumper and triple jumper, and then I did gymnastics. So I actually went the farthest in gymnastics, but I probably love basketball the most. Here, let me see. This is my home office. I don't know if you can see that. I don't know what it shows up. Do you see that picture?
Oh yeah. No. Oh.
That's a crazy picture, but
Yeah.
some dude. So like I said, I went to the state meet when I was a junior and senior year, and then fortunately was fortunate enough to place was all state in my senior year in high school. It was really weird because Oakland High wasn't obviously known for gymnastics really at that point. And in fact, my track coach was my gymnastics coach who really didn't know anything about gymnastics. We got trained by a guy at SF State who was a former Olympian. So we used to take the bus. This is very different than here in high school because you're actually doing academics.
Yeah.
I mean, Oakland High there was nothing to do in academics. I mean, really, my senior year, I had 4 periods out of 6 of gym. So nothing what you're doing. Um, but anyway, I was fortunate enough. I actually had a scholarship to Stanford back in the day, and that was when I was a senior. I was in 1974, and then I did what you shouldn't do, which people do now. But those days, I decommitted because my
Oh.
mom had a fit that I was actually going to go to school and do sports and not do something something like normal. I was actually, my goal when I was in high school is I wanted to go to the Olympics, and at that time Stanford had placed one of their men's gymnastics on the Olympic team for a number of years, and so I thought that was sort of my segue to try to get there. But
Yeah.
anyway, so that was my sort of my sports career, but I think it definitely influenced me. It was kind of funny when I went back east. They didn't even have a team,
Hmm.
and which I was flabbergasted, but they didn't have a team. So it actually led to my first job in college. Actually, I kind of a twisted story, but I ended up being a coach at a local high school at Cambridge High and Latin.
Wait,
Uh,
what did you coach?
I coached gymnastics. I was their gymnastics coach. It was actually kind of crazy. And then I ended up, so I did that for 4 years, and then I rowed in college. That's a crazy. I don't even know how I ended up rowing because I never rowed before in my life.
You've done like almost every single sport there.
But anyways, but I think all that stuff back in the day, I think that definitely influenced really what I wanted to do and go into sports.
Yeah, that's funny. You wanted to go to the Olympics. Now you've made it there, but like in a different way.
Yeah, no, it's a little twisted, but yeah, no, it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
So,
So like you, I run track too. I run the 400, 800, and 1600. But I've been injured a lot. So and something I've noticed like with all my injuries, like with myself and my teammates, is that it's pretty hard for like athletic trainers and sports medicine physicians to like fully understand like issues that athletes like present with. So like for example, like I had to bounce around to like a lot of different doctors, like because like sometimes I get like a lot of pain in my knees when I'm running, and like it took like a while before like someone like finally told me that like there's like a slight discrepancy in my leg lengths between my left leg and my right leg, and like
mhm.
that's what contributes to like the pain when I'm running. So what are some factors that you think like help you like become such a successful and prominent like sports physician, and like do you think your like involvement in sports like contributes to that?
Well, I think you're right. I would tell you that, you're running very three different races, which I don't have to tell you. I think the strategies in those races are very, very different.
Yeah.
And they're those the races that you're doing, the events that you're doing are very specific. You can tell that people that they're specialists, right, in each event that you're doing. So it's pretty remarkable you're doing all three of them because people specialize because the strategy is so different than
Yeah.
running 100 to 200, right? But anyway, it's pretty remarkable.
Mhm.
Um, but anyway, I do think and I still am pretty active now. But I do think that is very important in terms of relating to athletes. I mean, I coined a term in the at our Olympic Training Center. It's trying to achieve the what's called the perfect performance at the perfect time,
Mhm.
and I think it does help if you understand an athlete. There's so many factors that come into it besides just physical and biomechanical. I think the mental status is very, very important. What's going on in their life at the time, from all kinds of different factors, from family, outside family, friends, competitors, just past history of competitions, successes, failures. I think the mental aspect is also very important. But
Mhm.
I think to answer your question, I think to be an athlete and to understand that is really helpful for me.
Yeah. So moving on, like I'd assume that like your education like after high school like to become a surgeon was like really like rigorous. So how are you able to stay motivated and succeed, and like what were some challenges you faced during your education?
I think the biggest challenge, honestly, I would tell you honestly, is when I went from high school to college. I I was joking with my high school was just terrible. I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't even have AP courses. I never heard of an AP course.
Hmm.
Um, they didn't offer calculus, so I sort of ran out of math classes to take. Um, so yeah, I took 4 years of German for don't ask me how that happened, but I took that in high school. And we had a language requirement in college. Literally went through my 4 years in high school probably in a month. And so I think my biggest transition was in college and just, I mean, my English was terrible. Uh, because I think I really talk with so much slang coming out of Oakland and being with all these athletes. And but I had incredible mentors, and may sound a little corny, but when I went through college, med school, and when I was finished with my training, I called these people back, and I went back actually to thank them
That's
because
good.
I think they dramatically changed sort of my way of thinking and my so just how I thought. And it was really when you hear this stuff, I think your quest for learning, um, just how I thought about academics, life, and just in general. I think, and some of these people were so helpful for me through college, through high school. I mean, I'm not so sure through high school, but college, med school, and my training, I have stayed in touch with them. And actually, my college years, I actually flew back out to Boston and spent a couple of days with them. Some of my professors and stuff who I thought really dramatically changed my life. So I think that was really something for me. If I didn't have that, I'm not so sure. I mean, I went to this inner city high school, and not everybody went to. Those people didn't go to college. People just kind of hung out. And so coming back, when I came back, my first Christmas after basically almost failing all of my finals, I knew something was happening. I knew
Yeah.
something was happening, and I went and told my professor. What happened was that I told you I majored in biochem.
Yeah.
So the way they let you major in biochem at the time was you had to come in with 5 AP credits, so you had sophomore standing.
Yeah.
And I was so naive. I just went to the department chairman, who I didn't know was a Nobel Prize winner. I just made a meeting with him, just like first week in college,
Mm.
this naive freshman, and I just asked him if I could major in biochemistry because I thought it was more cool than bio because
Yeah.
everybody was majoring in bio who was going into med school. I didn't really want to be like everybody else. So he set up my courses literally for 4 years. I had to take an extra course every semester, but I had to write a thesis. In order to write a thesis, I had to be set up with a professor. So by
Yeah.
week number 6 in my freshman year, I had a project, I had a professor, and off we went, starting my 4 years of research. And so she was extraordinarily influential in really my college and academic life. So I just had to answer your question. I think I just had a lot of people who were very supportive. And that's why I think for my career now, when I look back, I'm just so grateful for all these people that helped me along the way, and I think I've tried to let them know that I really am grateful for them and for what they did, knowingly or not knowingly. So
Yeah. And I think that's really important, like showing appreciation for the people that helped you. Like I still try to talk to like my older teachers because like especially like my ninth grade science teacher, she was like really helpful. Like I still talk to her like
yeah,
regularly. So
it's
yeah.
amazing. You don't know it, but I think that's one of the beauty of teachers. My dad was a teacher in Berkeley Unified,
Hmm.
and we used to hate it when we were kids. We'd walk around Berkeley and we couldn't go down the street because all these people would stop and talk. And we're like, Dad, oh my God, we can come on. And then I think later, I think you understand as a teacher, you really touch a lot of people, and there are people that you touch in different ways, and that's what you're saying about your science teacher. I mean, this teacher, you may just see, you might remember things 10 years from now, like, yeah, that's what she said. Yeah. So it's pretty cool that way, actually, when you have teachers that do that.
Yeah. So is that like one of the things that motivated you to become a professor, like among all the other responsibilities that you have?
That I guess, yes and no. I think what came about was that I did my training at Stanford, and then Stanford wanted to open up a whole, what they call Stanford North. It's this whole facility down in Berkeley and Emeryville. And so since I have always, been in contact with him and running clinics down there, even when I was in private practice, the friend of mine who I trained with is the chairman of the department. We had these long talks, and I said, "All right, all right, all right, all right." I mean, it wasn't anything that I thought Stanford was going to do for me from a career
Mhm.
wise, but I thought it'd be a way to you can give back to Mother Stanford, and anyway, off it went, and then I've been doing that lately. So yeah, it's
Mhm.
worked out fine.
Yeah. That's cool. So like staying on the topic of education, like I'm not sure how much you know about like high school culture like today, but like I can tell you that it's very toxic. Like there's a lot of like most students they're like driven by competition for like the top universities, like for like anything they do in high school, like rather than like true passion. So like what can you say about the mindset that you had? Because like you mentioned that you took like four gym classes in your senior year. So like what can you say about like the mindset that you had when you were around our age and like how did that contribute to your success now?
You know, you know, I, so I had three kids,
Hmm.
and they grew up here because we grew up in Oakland and Berkeley.
Hmm.
I think you're right. I think the culture is very, very different now. Um, but what I try to emphasize to them, and probably I think to answer your question, I think you're it's almost if you can find teachers that are willing to, and most teachers will do this, if they find to help you in whatever way they do. But I think a lot of it is self motivation. Sorry, those are my dogs. Um, but what I told my kids going to college was it doesn't really matter, really, honestly, where you go. And my feeling was this to them, and I think it's worked out because I used to interview for my college and med school. I would tell you it's really you should be at a place where you're happy
Yeah.
because you probably have friends, and I have known a lot of my kids' friends that went to these quote unquote name schools and they hate it and then they transferred or they just were unhappy for 4 years. So if you go to a place in college that you are happy, you will flourish. I mean, you can go to, I'm not saying that South Dakota State is not a good school, but I mean, you can go to South Dakota State. You don't have to go to Yale and for you to be successful. Because if you go to Yale and hate it, you go to Hopkins, you don't like Baltimore, you just sort of like hold up and just do your 4 years and be rid of it and just move on. But if you're at Kansas State and you love it, you'll make connections, you'll make friends, you'll be so energetic about what you're doing in life because college is such a great time. Uh, and it's just not as stressful as high school was. High school, you have all these added pressures, but all of a sudden you get to college and you're really running the show. All of a sudden, it's your time, your life, your schedule, and when you really enjoy where you're at and what you do, you'll make great friends, great connections, and that just leads you on. If you go whatever, I mean, if you go to business school or you get a job or you go to law school or go to med school or whatever you decide to do, all those connections start there when you're happy. So I think it's really important to go where you're going to be happy.
Yeah. Like the way I thought of it is that like in high school it feels like you're competing with all these different people, but in college it's more about like competing with yourself, right? So yeah.
It totally is, but you get the whole. I mean, if you decide to go into med school,
Mhm.
because law schools, the med school is a whole different animal. But they have all these pre meds, and they could be pretty sick, And
Mhm.
so I think that, but you're right, and so I think how I sort of avoided that, I was just so busy in college, and that's why I think sports helped. I was
Mhm.
research, I was volunteering, I was coaching, and it just sort of I just was able to ignore all that other crazy, crazy medical pressure to get in. So
Yeah. And like especially with a career like medicine, it's like you have to like it's so stressful the education, so like you have to stay happy like outside of that.
I think so. You just got to make sure you love it. I mean, my daughter had not to get off subject, but she graduated high school, went to college.
Yeah.
She went to Claremont McKenna and, was in business, right? And worked on Wall Street.
Hmm.
She ended up hating all the people on Wall Street and what they stood for and all this other stuff. To make a long story short, she went back to school
Hmm.
and fortunately got into med school, and now she's actually a second year resident in medicine in New York City.
Yeah.
So I just think you have to find something that you really have a passion for, and whatever it might be, right? Whatever it might be. But I think medicine is a little different because it really consumes you, and there's so much information, especially with AI coming out. And
Mhm.
I mean, I love it, but I mean, you got to really love this stuff to really, because I think if you love it, you can be good at it. You could love law, right? You could love being a litigator. and you'll be a great lawyer in the courtroom.
Mhm.
So, but I think you really have to really love what you're doing.
Yeah. So like now that you've like gone through your education, you're a surgeon now. Like, can you talk about like what you enjoy about being a surgeon and like what are some of the challenges with it? Like, do you get nervous before procedures or like anything like that? Or yeah.
Uh, I have a new partner, and so he finished his training about a year and a half ago. So he's been with me for about a year, um, and it's interesting to be with him and to kind of address your questions. I think that it I guess I don't get really nervous anymore, but
Mhm.
it is even today. Like I have surgery, I operate on Monday, so I'll be preparing after we're done for all my surgeries tomorrow. But I still prepare old school, same way I do that for every surgery that I do, despite, I mean, if I do sports surgeries, so I do a lot of it with a camera. So whether or not I've done 10,000 of these things or I've done, 1,000 of them, I still prepare the same way. But it's interesting because my partner, he's great. He's going to be great,
Yeah.
but he gets really nervous. Yeah. And so we go over every surgery he's going to do before. We go over all the MRIs, X-rays, CAT scans, things like that.
Mhm.
And it's something I guess I sort of take for granted, but I sort of don't. But I think, it's like when you run track, it's all preparation. It's all preparation, and then you hit the ground running, and then you just get in your zone, right? You're in your zone, man. And that's what surgery is kind of like for me. So, I mean, I'm happy to be a surgeon. I think it's for me, it gives me sort of a difference in perspective because I'm also doing medicine, right, in the office and then on the field and at events and competitions. But then I'm actually in the operating room in a little sanctuary, actually sort of being a sort of a medical technician in a way, where you're doing anatomy. You have to love anatomy too in order to do it, I think, too. So it may sound a little weird, but you gotta love anatomy. So
You've talked about like your different like experiences like in your like field, right? So can you walk me through like like the process of how you built yourself up to like be qualified enough to work with Olympic level athletes? Like how did all of your different experiences like contribute to that?
I think some of it is like we talked about, some mentoring people who give you the opportunity. And you may find that now that some people believe in you. They may, and my whole thing is certainly early in my career, people believed in me more than I believed in myself. I think because you don't know. I think as a surgeon, you really don't really, I think, become simply somewhat good. It's like coaching until 10 years into practice, honestly. So, I mean, you may think you're good. We all know people who, think they're it, when they're not. And so there's a ton of those people in medicine. But so I think, let's see. So when I was going through my residency, I liked all the stuff. I like spine, hands, and all the different subspecialties of orthopedics. But sports was the most fun. I like the people who did sports. They were just much more lighthearted and were into athletics or into staying in shape and things like that. So uh, again, my chief of my department actually got me my first job. He lobbied to have me run this sports clinic in Southern California. So I finished my training here. Then I went down to Southern California and ran the sports medicine department in this big clinic. And that was really, really, really fun. And at that point, so that clinic, I was doing the athletes at UCSB in Santa Barbara.
Mhm.
I was doing two local high schools. And then uh, I always try to figure out this happened. So I got a call. It was my first Olympic team because I started seeing all these different athletes, and it was from the head of USA Judo. And anyway, and so then I got introduced to that my first Olympic team, USA Judo. Um, started really getting to know those athletes and then the staff at the Olympic Training Center, traveling with them, to some obviously the nationals and to the international competitions.
Mhm.
And then from there, I think sounds funny. It may be a little bit of a little kind of a mafia.
Yeah.
There's in the Olympic Training Center, then USA Track and Field
Hmm.
asked me if I jump on board with them, USA Triathlon, just and it kind of went from there. And so right now there are, I think, 9 teams that I do. But then then we moved back. And quite honestly, my wife hated Santa Barbara. My wife's Italian; she just hated it. Um,
It was a nice place. I went there for winter break like last year.
yeah, and so she found it, probably because she's Italian. I mean, all of her family's in Italy. She found it really homogeneous and just
Okay.
had a hard time there. So anyway, so we moved back, and that's how we came back to the Bay Area.
Hmm.
And then I think the Olympic stuff. Then um, you just, and besides the athletes, there are a lot of physicians you start coming in contact with this level of athlete, and that led me into the Warriors. And then it just kind of kept going.
So your job with the Warriors was actually like what like how I like found you and like asked you to like do
Oh,
the
really?
I'm a huge Warriors fan, so yeah.
Oh, wow. I can tell you a whole bunch of stories offline, but yeah.
So
uh,
like as you've worked with like different athletes at different levels, like how does it feel for you to like to work with like Stephen Curry like compared to like a high school athlete?
I mean, I treat them all the same. Honestly, I think one of the things that and maybe that's what a lot of folks for the NFL and the NBA sort of, if I would say it sounds kind of funny, respect about me is that I actually have a line in the sand. I
Hmm.
don't try to be a fan. This is my work. This is what I do, and this is the expertise I bring to both of the leagues. And so, but over the years, if you've been there 10 years or 15, 20 years, I mean, you get to know everybody, So Steph and Clay are very different people, like those three, Steph, Clay, and Dre. They're very, very different people. They are not the typical NBA player uh, or even the NFL player. I mean, those three guys they're like you. They're just like normal guys. They have given talent, right? But they're just kind of dudes, you know. Uh, the thing that you really find in pro sports is that their egos can be really just off the hook, and so and I think for that's why for me having this line in the sand, I'm not just like, hey man, you know what, and you're sort of on the same wavelength that way, um, and but I think that's the difference with Olympic athletes for me. That's why I've thoroughly enjoyed the Olympics, and that's why I accepted the head team position for Team USA. I think it's because uh, these athletes are just they're really really fun.
Yeah.
Do they have an ego? Yes, to a point, but it's nothing. It pales in comparison to the folks in pro sports. I respect everybody in the NFL and the NBA, obviously, that I see and take care of, but um, the Olympic folks are just super, super great. I mean, there's not one of them that I've ever disliked, and even some. And what's really fun is some of the lesser sports, like the USA badminton people.
Badminton. I did not know that was
There
a
you go, badminton. There's a USA badminton team. And these, I tell you, man, these athletes are just super. They're great. Women's field hockey, I mean, men's rugby sevens. I mean, there's 42 sports, but just super, super folks. So I think that I don't know. I think the Olympic level for me is I'd say much more enjoyable. Quite honestly, I think that there's so many factions in the pro level of media influence, what is said in the media,
yeah.
where this player is on in a year or two. Are they going to be on the trading block? I
Mhm.
mean, are they leaving the organization? Are they a franchise player? And all that stuff. It sounds kind of terrible, but it's like how some people are looked at. and how they fit in. If not, they're sort of more commodities as pure athletes and people. So
Hmm.
um, I don't want to sound like I didn't have a good time because I do have a good time, but it's just a different mindset for me.
Yeah.
So
Right. So what responsibilities does your job as like an Olympic physician entail? And how does it compare to like some of the other positions you've held?
so during we call them quads, every 4 years. So in between the 4 years, like the Olympics, um, I run around with all these different teams as a team physician. So for USA Swimming, that's what you and I were talking about. I was in Australia with the USA Swimming team. Then I was in Israel, and I'm just running around with different teams in their international competitions. Um, I think because I've been doing this for so long, I generally don't do the local competitions or the nationals. I actually just travel with them to their international competitions, whether or not it's triathlon or judo or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, and then in the Olympic years, I flip hats, and that's when I become the head team position. And that's with the Team USA. So then, um, when you and I were talking, so that's why I'm going this Friday. I'm going to the Pan American Games,
Yeah.
and I'm in charge of the Team USA down there for the 3 weeks, um, for Team USA in our Pan American Games competition. So
Mhm. This is just like a fun question. So like what are some of like the most like enjoyable or like recognizable like athletes you've worked with? Like I know you mentioned like Steph Clay, Dre. Like are there
Yeah, I think they're more visible in the pro level, and uh, like some of the NFL folks. And the NFL is a little different, being a consultant. So
Mhm.
for HIPAA, I can't tell you who I've seen and who I treated and things like that. But I would say if you think of, well, just take swimming because I just got back.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of this. So when you think of all these folks, like Katie Ledecky, Michael Phelps, Ryan Murphy. They're just names. And they're sort of, if you're not a swimmer, you probably wouldn't recognize some of these names, or some of the water polo players. The women's U.S. water polo. The women's U.S. water polo team is a monster. They've
Mhm.
been for 3 consecutive Olympics. They've won gold.
Damn,
Uh, they are
that's crazy.
they're beasts. They are just incredible. Anyway, so there are things like that, and that's why I say when you're with those folks, I mean, these athletes are just super neat people, just just people,
Yeah.
uh, and they have all this other stuff going on, and so I think then in track and field, when you get into sprinters for the track and field, it's very flashy, but
Mhm.
if you get into the javelin thrower or the steeplechaser, who obviously is an incredible athlete in their own mind, right? Or if you take your event, take an 800 or 1500,
Mhm.
um, when you get into the a little bit more distance, they're just to me they're just less. There's less flash and more reality.
That's definitely that's how it is in like high school too, especially.
Yeah, right. I mean, but I'm telling you, you run the 1500, you run the 800. I tell you, the 800 is such a hard race.
The 800.
Such a
That
hard
means
race.
for sure.
I mean, that race is so hard. I mean, that's why 400 people, they're not running that thing. That race is so hard. It's so strategic.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, so I mean, I think they're all super neat. I mean, even
Mhm.
the sprinters are amazing. And but anyway, so
Yeah. That's crazy to think about though. Like the athletes, they seem so like larger than life, but like when you actually like work with them, it's interesting to see. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think at the pro level, I think with the Warriors probably a little different just because, I was with them for such a long time, but you get to know their families.
Yeah.
So Steph's, like Ryan, I don't remember his daughter Ryan, like, Riley poked a marker right in his eye. So he goes, "Oh, you won't believe it, but hey, man, Ryan, I got poked." I said, "Okay, man, because he lives here." So like, okay, I said, "All right." let me come over, let me go check her out and stuff like that. So you get to know his mom, his dad, Clay's mom and dad, just stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but they're really super nice folks, super, super nice.
Yeah.
So
That's cool. So like, can you talk about your two nonprofit organizations, like shifting focus a bit? Like, I think I saw in your bio like One Nation Project and Civic Assets. So like, what inspired you to work on like starting up these projects? And yeah.
I think in a nutshell, because I grew up here in Oakland,
Hmm.
um, basically went to inner city high school, just doing all kind of crazy stuff, and doing crazy stuff, which I'm sure you don't do since this is in the 70s. So, and I think coming back and just seeing the whatever whatever fortune came my way, I was very grateful for that. So and then since and when I came back, one of my buddies asked me to coach basketball.
Hmm.
And so, my joke to him was like, Alvin, contrary to popular belief, I said, I have a real job now. I actually work. I don't have time to coach. Make a long story short, I ended up coaching basketball for almost 20 years, actually. I did AAU in the local high school. And that sort of spurred me into the AAU of, even in AAU, I just want to do something for the kids who are just really unfortunate. And that's why it started in West Oakland. A friend of mine, I just went to him. I said, we should do something for the kids. I was coaching an AAU team that was very, very successful. We were going to the national tournament every year and stuff. And my kids were really, really good. I had two guys going to the league for basketball. But, you look at East Oakland, West Oakland. East Oakland had all the money. West Oakland got nothing. So I went down to West Oakland and talked to another coach, and we started. And that's how the One Nation Project started. So we had no idea what we're doing. A guy was nice enough to let us use the recreation facility down there, and it's called Poplar Recreation Center in West Oakland near McClymonds. We furnished it with computers, refurbished it with the libraries. We had people come in and sort of be mentors and just talk to the kids, the value of education and the value of non-crime, actually.
Hmm.
And with that sort of the One Nation Project, how I think got started. And some of my original guys, what we did is we decided not to pass on kids. We started with them and went through all the way through high school because it starts from age 6 all the way through high school, which is really fun. And then real briefly on the civic assets thing, this is going to sound crazy, but I
Hmm.
don't know what I was doing one day. I literally called the Department of Defense in Washington, D.C., and I
Yeah.
just talked to someone after getting shuttled around these phone calls, and I just offered to do free knee and shoulder surgery. And after about 6 months of talking with them, they thought it was a good idea because I said I could bring in the best spine guy, I could bring the best hand guy, a joint replacement specialist, and I figured I knew I could get then medical centers to pitch in and give veterans free medical care. And so, anyway, make a long story short, they would, and they wanted me to sign this thing, but the signing meant that I could be deployed. I'm like, I'm not joining. Okay. I'm not joining the Army, not joining the Air Force. And so I wouldn't sign it. And I was really bummed out. And then I ended up talking to a lady who started Civic Assets for President Clinton. So what happened was that after I wasn't going to be able to do this free surgery thing,
Hmm.
that's she started a thing called Civic Corps, which is um, uh, taking all kinds of disadvantaged folks and getting them jobs. It was under Bill Clinton. Anyway, so we
Hmm.
started talking, and basically, make a long story short, it turned into I don't know if you recall this, but a couple of years ago, probably a number of years ago now, some of these decorated Marines, um, they didn't know what happened. They would end up like shooting and killing someone at a bar or a restaurant or something. They'd had no recollection of this, and anyway, so both of us got really interested in that and talked to the original sort of reporter in Fort Collins, where there's an army base in Colorado. Make a long story short, this turned into a PTSD for veterans,
Hmm.
and then integrating them back into society, and then it presented it to the four branches of the service. It actually went to the Pentagon. It was kind of cool, and they really liked the idea. And then, of course, when COVID happened, it all slowed down.
Yeah.
Uh, where it's going now is using, because we learned a lot about after interviewing, I mean, hundreds of folks in the service. They like to do things that are really based for the greater good. So instead of doing something behind a desk, like for example, like Google and Yahoo, they were really on board. They were willing to give some of these guys jobs, but
Yeah.
that's not what they really like to do. So we're working with the California Department of Forestry, actually Cal Fire, and for them to be, the Department of Transportation to do all kinds of stuff like that. So
Mhm.
that's kind of where it is now. So we're transitioning these folks that, and have, sort of PTSD, mental illness. We're housing them. We have a place in the city, in the Presidio, to house them, and then kind of move forward and try to transition them into society. But that's what civic assets is.
Yeah. It's cool to see like I think the nonprofits they show your like passion for just helping society. And I think that's really cool.
Thanks. I think more people should do it and
Mhm.
talk about all the pro guys. That's where I think things should happen. Personally, between you and me, I mean, they have so much money, and not only that, but franchises, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, just real quick, right? We have the Giants,
Hmm.
Niners, Warriors, right? San
Yeah.
Francisco on their banner, right?
Yeah.
And then you think, why does San Francisco or even the Bay Area with billions of dollars have an issue with public education,
Yeah.
with homelessness, with mental illness, with rape and crisis centers? I mean, I don't think you're asking these guys to patch every pothole or cure AIDS or something like that. But I mean, can you look beyond your bank account and do something for the greater good?
Exactly. Like we have so much money going to like superficial things. Like we even had the Raiders here like until recently. So it's
Yeah.
like yeah, like that money should be like directed to something better for sure.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you and I can go on and on and on and on and that because I've tried all kinds of stuff with that with these folks. So,
Mhm.
uh, but anyway, so
Mhm.
okay. So I don't want to take your time, but it was fun chatting with you, and
Yeah.
you
You
know,
too. You too. I
so
appreciate it. Thank
all
you.
righty. Okay. Take care, man. All
Talk
right.
to you later.
I'll see you.
Bye.
Okay. Bye bye.